The worst thing that could happen to a property manager is you have a vendor show up to the building and they are supposed to have something as simple as fob access, let's say, and then that vendor notifies them that they don't have access, just to realize all of their tenants don't have access. And they don't even know where to begin with the hunting down of problem solving in that scenario.
Yeah, and that is another key part of what we bring to, what Layer 10 brings to this methodology, this framework that we have built, is that not only do we build with the user experience in mind, but it's not just the person who's occupying the space, the hotel guest, the apartment resident, or the office employee. It's also the operations staff. It's the facilities team that have to actually support the technology. So if you go, so we consider all the different stakeholders to make sure that the solutions that we're selecting are not just right for the user, but also right for the staff.
Welcome to The Profitable Cleaner, a podcast on commercial cleaning sales and entrepreneurship.
Man, I'm super excited to be speaking with you today, Ken. So I was thinking about how to start this entire podcast off.
Yeah.
And I thought about maybe just backtracking of what I know about you.
Okay.
How we met, and then we can kind of unpack it and go from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So I remember the first time I heard about you, it was from Barb. And I'm sure we'll speak about Barb later. And she said, hey, I met this technology guy, as she described you. He's going to be wonderful for our community and our building, and he's got a heart of gold. And Barb didn't throw out a lot of praise often. It was more cynicism at first. So I was like, okay, perfect. And then I'm sure we met in between, but my next memory of you was you speaking at the Trailhead Community Gala and kind of being the MC and host, if you will. And then Layer 10, your company, or maybe it was you personally, I can't remember, donating a $10,000 check. And I was like, man, this guy is awesome. Not just because of the donation, but because of how you hosted that entire night. What else I know about you is you're a father, stepfather, husband, man of God, and have done some jiu-jitsu. I don't know at what level. And then entrepreneur and business owner. So with all that being said, what's the story of Ken?
I don't think there's anything left to add. I think you covered it. I think we can cut here.
All right,
and
good.
I appreciate the time that you've given me today. Yeah. No, that's a fair summation. So, my relationship with Trailhead started as a client when I met the architect for the building at a conference, and he started telling me the story of Trailhead and asking about my services and what we might be able to provide. And of course, he had no way of knowing that he happened to be talking to the father of an autistic teenager at the time. The project has gone on for many years. She is now 21, but she was a mere teen then. And so that's how my relationship with Trailhead started, and my introduction to Barb. And my involvement has just grown more and more since then. And yeah, I remember that gala and having some time with you for the first time. Like, we'd been on a lot of the same calls, I think, but hadn't had a lot of one-on-one time until that gala. And I stepped in because we moved it from the spring to the fall, and our normal MC, the voice of the Colorado Buffaloes, is not as available in the fall as he is in the spring. So I was a backup for him, but. Yeah, so that's how our relationship started, and I know that it's grown over time, and had the opportunity at the Trailhead conference. I think was the first time we had a conversation about faith.
Yep.
And I can't remember what initiated that, but it's something that my wife and I and our family of 6 blended children. So we are a large family, blessed family, blended and blessed, as we say. And so my faith is something that I share pretty openly.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, we hadn't gotten to know each other that well. And I said something to you, and you said, oh yes, no, I'm right with you. And so we were able to have a conversation about that. And I do remember that was the first time I learned about your podcast.
Yeah.
Because you were telling me about your ranking on Apple Podcasts And so I started picking your brain about maybe I should start a podcast someday.
You should.
Maybe I should.
Yeah, I know a guy.
I know.
Yeah, I know a guy.
What's up, my profitable cleaners? Listen, you guys know that running a cleaning business isn't just about cleaning. It's about growth, trust, building a legacy, and making true impact. That's where Swept comes in. With Swept, it's simple, powerful. It's an app that you can track your cleaner attendance with geofence clock-ins, streamlined processes, team communication, and save hours on payroll. It's the ultimate tool designed specifically for janitorial businesses just like yours. Take control, save time, focus on what matters most, growing your business and spending time with your family. Swept. Clean better, grow faster. If you guys are interested in Swept, click the link below in the show notes and partner with one of the best in the industry.
So I've always been curious about you, Ken, and we'll dive into more like layer 10 and all that goes on with what you guys do from a building technology standpoint, because I think that will be interesting, especially for a lot of people listening. But the makeup of Ken, like, I'm curious, like kind of the story. So obviously I know you more in the professional sense, but the more I get to hear layers of you, like there's a sense of discipline I get from you. Like, and I think that goes into like the learnings that we've shared some common grounds with like the Jocko stuff, the Jiu-Jitsu stuff, what, your faith, story, what's really kind of played a role in the makeup of you going down that personal development journey?
Well, that's a great question. So I think it does. Everything I do is rooted in my faith, and I have found not only mentors, virtual mentors, and real mentors in the faith, but also in the secular world. People who are typically, or most often, they are Christian, but that's not what they lead with. There's the Myron Goldens, who is, very forward with his faith, and he'll tell you in his challenges, once you've paid, he'll say that if you don't know me that well, everything I do is from a basis of my faith. And he's been a pastor, and he has not only his business podcast, but he also has his YouTube channel that is Bible studies with Myron Golden. But other people like Jocko, and that are more on the secular side, but who I think the thing that I think is most important is the biggest challenge that I have and is around subjugating my ego, is pride, is not taking responsibility for my own successes, and also not taking responsibility for overcoming my challenges. And I get a lot of that from some of those people that I mentioned, from Jocko, and taking extreme ownership. And you have to swallow your pride. You have to subjugate your ego to say, I'm responsible because I am the leader. I was the leader in the room, so I have to take ownership of that. Even though inside my pride might be saying, but it wasn't your fault. You did everything right. And, there are, it's not just Jocko where you get that. I get that from Myron Golden. I get that from scripture, that pride is a sin. And so to lead with that's just been a challenge of mine, being, taking pride in being self-reliant. And I think this also is pretty typical of just men in general, right? We take the whole world on our shoulders, and we carry that weight, and we don't talk about it, and we don't share our feelings. And
that's right.
That's just as a man, as a father, as a husband, that's just in our nature. And so really breaking through those different sources, I think is one of the biggest challenges, and one of the things that, as I've grown in that part of my life, I have seen the abundance in my life increase in all areas, in my family, in my business, in our ministry, and all the things that we do.
Was there a turning point or a moment in time that you can kind of recall to where it was like that, I call it the cold water moment, where like cold water's thrown on you in some sort of honest capacity that's like, okay, I really need to work on my ego, work on myself, work on maybe being more vulnerable, to who I am as a leader. Was there a moment, or was this just kind of an evolution over time?
Even you just saying being more vulnerable, that's hard to even hear. That turns things in my stomach a little bit. Oh gosh, it's so against my human nature. I think it's been more of a graduation, just things that have transpired over time. I can't think of a single instance. It's little things, and connecting the dots, looking backwards. It's the 10th dot that makes you but it's not really that thing, because then you say, oh yeah, this is a message that has been delivered to me for many years, and I'm only now putting it together, and it's starting to make sense. The puzzle is starting to form a picture that I can understand as more pieces fall into place.
I think that's really well said. Actually, we were just talking. I was talking with Jay, our producer, before this show, talking about really how everything in life is a journey, not a destination. And I think where I have found the most unhappiness in life is expecting a destination. And then where I've probably found the most fulfillment is from the journey.
Yeah.
No matter what that is. Interesting. So again, peeling back these layers of Ken, it sounds like you've found, I'm curious because I've interviewed, I don't know, you're probably 185 now. Wow. In terms of guests.
Yeah, congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you. And I've interviewed a few people that have been heavy into jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
One was actually, he competed at a global scale from Brazil.
Wow.
And was ranked once like in the top 5 of the world. UFC wanted him, all of this stuff. And then I've interviewed people that are brand new to their journey.
Right.
I'm just curious because I think there's some commonality across the board with jiu-jitsu and actually business, ironically enough, because all of you guys are top performers. Talk to me about your journey into jiu-jitsu and what that's meant for you.
Well, I can say that at one time I was ranked top 5 in my weight class, age group, belt rank, and in my studio.
Oh, cool.
I was at least top 50.
Nice.
Yeah, to narrow it down to that cool. much. If you narrow down the sample size far enough, I can get to top 5.
Nice.
So my jiu-jitsu journey, to continue with that phrase, it started with my son. And he wanted to take martial arts when he was about 9 or 10, our oldest son, who's 23 now. And we just went to what I now call a McDojo, and it was just a strip mall karate place. And he asked me to do it with him. I had never done any combat sports in my life, but we did that and for about a year, and he sort of lost steam. It didn't stick with him, and it stuck with me, but I didn't want to stick with that school. And so that's when I first got into jiu-jitsu, and it was somebody I worked with who was doing it, and he heard I was interested, and so I started going to his school. And life gets in the way every once in a while, and you get away from it. But it's something that I have done all in for I think 6 or 8 years of my life. And for me, when I tell the story about it, it's one of the stories that I share is that whatever it is that is on your mind, whatever's weighing you down, when you walk in the gym, it's gone.
Yeah.
You can't remember what it is on the way back because it takes such a singular focus because you're going to get hurt.
Mm.
And I've been blessed to train with some great instructors and great schools, and Easton has been the school where I've spent most of my time, and they have pros that compete in the UFC. So it's an excellent school with many locations around the Denver area. And so plug out to Easton and Matrix. And it requires, it's like physical chess. It's like you have to be that focused on everything that's happening, and it clears your mind of any. It's so much better than meditation or yoga or any other Eastern religion, that it is all about that single-minded focus and that drive towards improvement. And I think it certainly has helped instill some of the disciplines that carry over into my business, and being able to focus on one thing at a time.
Totally.
Yeah, I attribute a lot to spending that time on the mats.
What's the jiu-jitsu culture like? I feel like when I think of combat sports, I think of two variations of it. I think of total douchebags, if I'm just being completely honest, like the 19-year-old that you walk into a boxing gym trying to rip your head off. And then I think of jiu-jitsu people that all have a sense of like humility and humbleness, but like I know that they're like silent killers, you know, like, so I mean, talk to me about the culture of it, because every time I interview someone with the jiu-jitsu background, it's a way different energy and vibe than it is with someone with like intense other type of combat sport background.
I don't know why that is, because you would think there would be more similarities across the combat sports, but I completely agree with you. And I think the vast majority of people who train jiu-jitsu and they get to a certain level where they get a confidence in their ability to take care of themselves and their families, they no longer... That's to go back to the ego thing. Jiu-jitsu is humbling.
Yeah.
Because no matter how good you get, there's going to be somebody better.
Yeah.
Even in the gym. And I've had, white belts that come in with wrestling backgrounds. So there's one kid in particular I'm thinking about who recently joined the gym. And not only is he a college wrestler and a D1 wrestler, but he was an Iowa D1 college wrestler. And he was a monster. He didn't know any jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, of course.
But he's annihilating everybody on the mats doing wrestling. So it was, you have to unlearn. He had to unlearn all these things, and now he's competing. So in jiu-jitsu, but it's a very humbling experience, and for whatever reason, it seems to be more prevalent among jiu-jitsu practitioners than the other martial arts. That once you have that, once you know that you can take care of yourself and take care of your family, you no longer have to prove it.
Yeah.
And I actually have a story about that. I remember being in Costco. This is during the pandemic, and nerves are, everybody is tense.
It was a little weird.
And I don't know, I ran into somebody with my cart and I just apologized, and he got really heated. Like he wanted to pick a fight almost in front of the meats at Costco. And I apologized to him. Like I just looked him in the eye and said, I apologize. I just wasn't paying attention. And he, it just brought him down, and I knew after, I smiled as I walked away, because I knew odds are it wouldn't, I hate to say this, but it wouldn't have been a fair fight.
Yeah.
But I didn't need to prove anything.
Of course.
And so, yeah, that's...
All right, I know you guys are wondering, how can we keep our cleaning crews engaged and informed, and it doesn't have to feel like a struggle? With Team Engine, you can now automate messages, update teams in real time, and bridge language gaps with their built-in AI-powered translations. Whether it's scheduling, last-minute changes, or sharing critical updates, Team Engine keeps your workforce connected and productive. Say goodbye to miscommunication and hello to smoother operations. Visit teamengine.io to get started today.
Well, this is where I hear the connection. So not just from jiu-jitsu, because you're trained at a tactical standpoint, right? But it goes back to the ego. There's no ego for you in that moment, right? You can almost submit to yourself and say, I have nothing to prove. I can take ownership and be the one to apologize because you did mess up. You hit him with the cart, whatever. Yeah. Doesn't justify the reaction, but that doesn't matter. So then, and this is where I've seen the connection when talking with people on the show is there's jiu-jitsu, there's self-discipline, there's personal development, and then we're going to talk about business, but they're all very intertwined. So in that moment, yeah, you could kick his ass because you're trained in jiu-jitsu, but you didn't have to go there because you were able to submit the ego.
Yeah. And I've noticed since training more strictly in jiu-jitsu that I'm less likely to get angry on somebody flips me off on the road, and my wife will comment like, "Did you see what he did?" Like just
Yeah. I heard a old friend of mine used to say, if you really want to test your spiritual state of mind, how are you when you drive? And I've always thought that was good.
That is
yeah,
good.
I'm a man of God, and then here I am in some rage of an incident on the highway. It's like, well, am I really? Like behind closed doors.
And that's definitely part of it too. I barely tapped somebody's bumper as I was parking on the street in Castle Rock, and it was an older woman, and she came out and she was very upset. And she's, she claimed that I had bent her license plate boundary or border bracket that she had just purchased. And I apologized and she was like, I said, well, I'm happy to, if you want to give me your information, I'll send you some money. I don't carry a lot of cash. And she said, well, I don't feel comfortable giving out my information. I said, well, I understand that. And I took out my wallet. I said, I have $7. Would you take my $7? And I was as kind as I could be. And, it was funny because she said, no, I couldn't take your money and put it in her pocket. And I said, well, bless you. I apologize again. And she stopped me. She said, who are you? And I just said, I'm a son of the Most High God.
Yep.
And so, this was an older woman. It wasn't it wasn't a physical threat.
Yeah, of course.
But she was hot and heated, and it's just, give it to the Lord.
Well, how you show up in those situations matter, right?
Yeah.
Even though there's no physical threat, but there could definitely be, you could have posed yourself as an emotional threat to her.
Sure.
And
or could have just been a jerk to her.
Or just been a jerk. Yeah. Exactly. So I always have to ask myself, like, and I've said this on the show, like, I never know. I don't always know when I'm doing God's will, but I definitely know when I'm not. And so, like, I know when I'm being not who
when you're out of alignment, when you're off the path.
100%. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always on.
Right.
But I know when I'm intentionally not doing that. And that's probably the lesser version of me. I want to, so we've kind of talked about the personal side of who you are. And I think I like to start there because I don't think our businesses ever outgrow us. Like, our business will go in tandem with who we're becoming. And I want to talk about Layer 10 because I know, as Barb said, the late founder of Trailhead Community, you are more than just a good technology guy, as she labeled it. But I've had the chance to work with you from the Trailhead side and watch what Layer 10 has done. But maybe for the ones listening, give us some professional background and tell us a little bit about Layer 10 and all that you do in that realm.
Yeah, so I came up through IT. I started as a COBOL CICS programmer when I graduated from the University of Florida Go Gators in 1994.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard, but they recently won the men's basketball championship.
That's right.
In case you hadn't heard.
Heck of a game.
Hearing it here first.
Yeah.
And so that was 94, and I started in as a programmer and then sort of moved up into management things and then got into consulting and spent the vast majority of my career as a consultant. And I had the opportunity with the last firm that I worked for before starting Layer 10 to manage the IT infrastructure components for an office build. And it was DaVita Kidney Care, who was relocating from California to Denver. And they were a client of ours from our other office. And so they became owned that relationship when they were moving to Denver. And I had never done that work before. I knew enough to be dangerous. And on the infrastructure side, I wasn't a hardware guy. I was a software guy. And it gave me the opportunity to work on, to work in the physical space, to see the physical manifestation of the work that I was actually doing. It was the first time I'd ever really done that. As a consultant, you're improving back office systems and HR processes. Yeah. And it can be very fulfilling and very exciting work. And I worked for great clients and I loved my career. Well, I really liked my career. I love my job now. I love Layer 10. I really liked my career that I had then. I won't say love. But to see that, and not only that, but to do something sort of with my hands. I wasn't climbing ladders and installing gear, but I had PPE for the first time. I had to wear a hard hat.
Yeah.
And so it was fulfilling in many ways. And then that project ended. And a couple of years later, DeVita was building another building, and they asked if I could come back. I had left that consulting firm that I worked for at that time. And so they brought me back as an independent. And from there, Layer 10 was born. A former colleague of mine at that same firm who had done some similar work, he and I just started having conversations about, is there an opportunity to build a firm that focuses just on this, at this intersection of technology and physical space?
Mm.
And so we started socializing the idea, and with everybody who worked in the industry, with architects, contractors, electricians, audiovisual guys, and to a person, they all loved it. It was actually a little intimidating how well it was received, because like, surely we can't be the first ones to have thought of this. Why isn't this already being done?
Right.
And so that has, that was 2016 that we decided to jump ship and make this start Layer 10. And it's gone through a lot of evolutions and a few pivots in that time. But what it's come down to is that we are our mission is to revolutionize how technology is integrated into the built environment. The way it's done now is old, it's backwards, it doesn't work. We get through design and into construction before anybody starts thinking about how we're going to build the technology, the audio-visual, even the networking and Wi-Fi and physical security and IoT and artificial intelligence, intelligent building management systems. There's so much intelligence that we can build into the space from not only an operations perspective, like when you talk about the building management systems, but also from a user experience perspective. And the creative disciplines around commercial real estate, they for decades have been using user design theory. Architects would never design a hotel without understanding who they're designing it for. Is it a business traveler or a weekend warrior or families? They wouldn't start designing the hotel without that information. We do the same thing with interior design and landscape architecture. Engineering has some of those components, but nobody is looking at the technology. And when you think about, especially a hotel, an office, but even an industrial building or a multifamily residence, there is a layer of technology that is critical for the performance of the space. And it may be a beautiful physical structure and have all the perfect finishes and furnishings, but if it doesn't work, if you cannot connect to the Wi-Fi, if the audio visual in the conference room doesn't connect, if your digital mobile pass in the hotel doesn't unlock your door,
that's right,
then you've ruined that experience. You've ruined the experience of the employee, of the guest, of the resident, depending on what it is that you're building. And so we're trying to bring a new attention to that traditionally has not been part of the commercial real estate development process.
Sounds so crazy to me that we're in 2025 right now, and there's not a lot of Layer 10s out there.
Right.
You're almost like an architect for technology.
And that's so funny that you say that, because that was one of the first frames of reference that we would use.
Really?
As a technology architect.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
So where do you think the gap is between like a building operator or commercial real estate developer? Like, how has this been missed, I guess, is my question. Well,
I think to some degree it's not an industry that embraces technology very much. It's, there have been a lot of inroads within the design of space and using technology to design the space, but not the technology that gets built into it. If that distinction makes sense. And so I think it's a slow moving industry, and I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
And the experience that many developers, contractors, architects have with technology is very negative. It's expensive. It never works as promised. It's always late. It keeps us from moving in on time. And so I think there's a resistance to it, to embracing technology. And so people keep it at arm's distance. And we, since we founded in 2016, and for the first 7 or 8 years of our existence, until that sort of economic downturn that we're in right now, and really commercial real estate is in a recession that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah.
And inflation and interest rates are just decimating the industry.
Yep.
But that aside, until that point, we were not only closing 75% of our prospects, that if I can get in the room with a developer or a tenant who was finishing their space and they had a real project to talk about, not just an introductory meeting, but they've got work and they're interested in how we can help, we were closing 3 out of 4, 75%.
Why do you think that is?
Because we were able to explain how we were going to solve a problem they didn't even know there was a solution for.
Yeah. So to give context to people listening right now, you were able to do that to a 75-year-old woman and Barb Ziegler, who built Trailhead Community, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's a lot of different technology in that building due to the makeup of the demographic.
Yeah.
And so you guys came in, I'd say, fairly early on.
Yes, very much.
Which I guess kudos to Barb. All right. But it's so going back to the industry as a whole, you're doing a lot of educating right now on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know you have hundreds of followers on a LinkedIn newsletter. You're putting a lot of content out there on the education gap. I guess talk to me a little bit about those educational pieces that you're really trying to speak to those building owners, those developers, architects about.
Yeah. So to go back to sort of the economic recession that we're in right now in commercial real estate, and the market has changed very much. And so we started looking at, a couple of years ago, okay, how can we increase our impact? Because with the mission that we have to change how this is done and to really make spaces come alive with the technology, the opportunities to do so on a project-by-project basis are far more limited than they were 3 or 4 years ago. But we have a proven methodology, a framework that we have developed that is unique in the industry, that not only are we able to close 75%, but up until around that same time period, we had a 100% client retention rate, 100%. Once we came on and built something, it was no longer a question. We were just brought on for every project because of the value that we provided and that focus that we provided. So we knew we had something special. And so we started going from, pivoting from a one-on-one marketing, business development, go-to-market messaging to broadcast messaging. And I started the newsletter that you mentioned, weekly newsletter on LinkedIn, and then started, being on podcasts and webinars and hosting our own webinars. And now what we're doing is we've launched a Layer 10 Academy. And that is, we have our first course offering is a 5-day challenge, so that you come in and for 1 hour each day, you get really the meat of what it is we do, not only just what it is and why we do it, but the how.
Yeah.
And so that at the end of those 5 days, you can start applying what you learn to your projects. And we are speaking to architects and project managers for developers, directors of development, general contractors. We even have some integrators who are tuning in. And so, it's really the Layer 10 Academy is a significant pivot. It's the largest pivot we've had in the history of Layer 10 to start to increase how the impact that we're having on the industry, because that's really what we're in business to do, is change how things are being done.
What's up, Profitable Cleaner listeners? Quick question for you. Are you using 5 to 7 different platforms just to manage the everyday operations of your commercial cleaning company? If so, let us help you consolidate that into one platform. Introducing you uSource. Go to usource.com, book your free demo today, and actually get started on your trial for 60 days. No charge for 60 days, all from time and attendance to reporting, vendor management, operations, sales. It's time you stop using 5 to 7 platforms and consolidate into one. So listeners, don't forget, go to usource.com and start your account today.
So talk to me about what does a good building technology embrace look like in your eyes?
So a lot of it has to do with timing, because typically technology isn't considered until construction diagrams are already completed and the build is started. And then somebody says, oh, we should probably bring AV in. We should probably bring physical security in. It's giving IT a seat at the design table so that we can be a part of the discussions, the broader discussions. We can avoid design decisions that are made about the physical structure, like the location of the tech closets on each floor of a multi-floor single-tenant office building, so that we stack all of those IDF closets, just as an example, that our run lengths are not too long that we can't reach. There's a 100-meter length on your low-volt cable from the head-end equipment to whatever that end device is. So if you have a large enough floor plate and you put the closet in the corner, well, I can't reach the wireless access points in the far corner, or the AV equipment in that conference room you put in the corner. So now we have to look at, well, now it's too late to move the closet. So is there another storage closet that we can take over as a secondary IT closet on that side of the floor? If that's not available, then we're talking about putting repeaters and switches in the ceiling, which is not ideal for anybody, especially when you think about it from an operations perspective, because you don't want to disrupt the employee space to pull in a ladder so that I can plug in a low volt cable above somebody's desk while they're trying to work. So there are decisions like that. Materials is a decision that can affect audio performance. We had somebody who brought us in a little bit late on a boardroom redesign, and it was 3 walls of glass. One of the short walls was drywall. So the 2 long walls on the far wall were all glass, and the landlord would not let us touch the ceiling for any sort of sound dampening. So glass is a very audio hostile environment. And this was their boardroom with international calls that they were going to be using, board meetings. And this is a Fortune 200 company that we're talking about, and their office in London. And so the experience in that room was very important. But because we had no input in the design of the space itself, we were just brought in to throw the technology in. We had a lot of different hoops to jump through. And eventually we made it work, but it wasn't as elegant, I would say, or as cost-effective a solution as it could have been had we been brought to the table earlier.
That's so interesting, because I know a lot of people listening right now, they're in the property management space.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that like we see, especially the ones listening in the audience right now can relate to, is like the worst thing that could happen to a property manager is you have a vendor show up to the building and they are supposed to have something as simple as fob access, let's say. And then that vendor notifies them that they don't have access, just to realize all of their tenants don't have access. And they don't even know where to begin with the hunting down of problem solving in that scenario.
Yeah, and that is another key part of what we bring to, what Layer 10 brings to this methodology, this framework that we have built, is that not only do we build with the user experience in mind, but it's not just the person who's occupying the space, the hotel guest, the apartment resident, or the office employee. It's also the operations staff. It's the facilities team that have to actually support the technology. So if you go, so we consider all the different stakeholders to make sure that the solutions that we're selecting are not just right for the user, but also right for the staff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that there is a plan. We frequently perform handovers to the management staff after we finish development, and we've been working with the development team for months, over a year sometimes. Now the space is ready for handover. We'll come in and spend a couple of hours, half day, a full day with that team to teach them how to use all the tools. And then we make sure that there's documentation in place so that there is a managed service contract, so that they have, often through Layer 10, a single number to call, so they don't have to try to decide themselves, is this a network problem? Is it an audiovisual problem? Is it security? Is it the cable? That's not your job. Your job is just to make things. We'll show you how to make the changes, change the music on the overhead system, and add a fob, add a new camera, change camera angles, and do all of those things. But when it comes to something isn't working, it's not 1-800-LAYER-10. We couldn't get that number, but in theory, 1-800-LAYER-10.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we can roll trucks from the right vendor, the right integrator to go fix that problem.
So would you recommend for you mentioned the academy, and I've seen and heard some of the academy behind the scenes, like more than what you just mentioned here.
Yeah.
I think it's really good stuff. Would you recommend like facility directors, property managers to be kind of part of that? Because like I really see like, again, 2025 and the fact that technology design and architecture in layman's terms isn't part of like the building operation and development in the forefront is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Would you recommend like facility folks, property management folks?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, the three groups that we engage with the most with Layer 10 and more with the academy are architects, developers, and owner operators.
Yeah.
Facilities teams. I have a lot of the weekend texts or calls that I would get would be from the facilities teams for us to come in and fix a problem. It's usually shortly after we go live, but at any time of a build. So yes, absolutely. And what I'd like to do, so we've got a challenge coming up in just a couple of weeks. We run one every month. So even if you miss the next one, there'll be another one that's coming out right behind it. But I'd love to offer that to your audience and give you a link that you can share with your audience. Special offer just for the Profitable Cleaner audience.
Awesome, man.
To check it out and get involved. And we have the challenge that happens every month, and we also, preceding that, a week or two before each one of those, we also do a LinkedIn Live event, so you can kind of get that 10,000-foot level across the board of what we do, and then the challenge goes into much more detail on how to implement and shares tools and templates. And
awesome.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that with your audience.
We will put that link below wherever you're listening to this. Literally click below. That link will be there. But I think that's what's like special about this show and the people listening in our community. It's like, how can you stay informed with the latest industry happenings and then be connected with industry experts, right? Which I think this is I can guarantee if there's a facility service professional listening right now, that they, like myself, have overlooked this aspect of the building operation, right? Or it's not front of their radar because we're always worried about putting out literal, sometimes fires within the building, right? It's funny though, you mentioned security, because security with all of our facilities folks is of utmost importance. And to me, I think technology.
Yes.
And then it's not in the conversation though.
And there is, even prior to the pandemic and a real focus on safety and security, more from a health perspective than a physical, there was a lot of attention on the integration of technology, artificial intelligence, and machine learning into the physical security systems, where you can have systems and cameras that are intelligent enough to identify patterns. So if you have exterior cameras, as an example, around the perimeter of your building, that typically they learn the traffic patterns of people walking through
so crazy.
the field of view. And if there's an anomaly there, where, okay, we have dozens of people where we rarely have more than 3, and they're just standing still. And taking some of the reliance on the human aspect and bringing attention to that security guard who's sitting in the security operating center and looking at 100 different cameras and trying to find if there are any problems. It just brings his attention to that. Hey, look here. Something is going on here. And it might just be, you can look at it and say, oh, it's just a school field trip. They're just gathering here and then they're going to head down the mall. Or, okay, this is a protest that now I need to get.
What I thought of.
I need to bring attention, or it could be something worse. And the intelligence that we're adding to these cameras, who can also identify somebody walking with an aggressive gait, walking through your lobby very aggressively, or dressed inappropriately in a trench coat in July, or wearing, dark sunglasses, something like that, can bring your attention to that. Hey, go check on this person. And that's technology that's been around for a long time. Intelligent microphones that can distinguish the difference between a gunshot and a car backfiring.
Interesting.
And bring your attention to that. So there's so much that we can do in that realm, and it's an often overlooked space, and it's regrettably more important than ever.
Yeah.
In the spaces that we build.
Well, exactly why people need to be connected with you. Your LinkedIn profile is going to be below as well, but also the academy. So if you're a facilities professional or you work heavy within facilities, which I know is you, if you're listening to the show right now, such interesting information that like I've never thought of, right? Like just the traffic patterns of people and how that would be important. Also would be good for a facilities director just to know why those patterns are fluctuate, right? I mean, we see like pattern traffic, as they say, during certain floor spaces. Like if I was talking to a floor guy right now, he could tell you exactly when you need to like strip and wax your floors on a quarterly or annual basis because of traffic patterns. So
and you can supplement that knowledge, that data with data from your building management systems, from your lighting system, from your wireless networking system, because you can create heat maps of where the traffic is just based on triangulation of different devices pinging the wireless access point. So you can see where traffic is, and that's really helpful for anybody who's managing, say, a shopping center. I think of whatever reason Aspen Grove comes to mind. And, there are pockets in many shopping centers where nothing ever survives in that spot.
Yes, you are right.
And if we understand, the traffic patterns, and nobody makes that right turn. Why is that? Maybe it's the vegetation you don't even see down there because there just happens to be this large tree.
The parking lot.
Or it's how the parking is set up. So how can let's cut down that tree? Maybe not, but let's put up some signage to direct people that way. There are all sorts of analog solutions that you can come to, and inexpensive solutions in some cases, by the digital data that you're able to collect from the systems that you implement. So if you're intelligent when you design the space, you can have access to that from day one, but there are many things that you can still retrofit and add intelligence to unintelligent systems that give you that insight.
That's really cool. Never thought of those concepts. 2 last questions for you here.
Sure.
One professional, last one will be personal. Where do you had mentioned like kind of the downturn in commercial real estate. A lot of people that are listening to the show have all felt it, whether contracts being cut, office space being pulled back. Where do you see kind of the next 3 years of commercial real estate headed? Let's just start there.
Okay. So I think there's still a lot of settling that needs to take place. I'm not sure we've seen the bottom yet, because how the pro formas were built for projects, and many of these projects take 5, even 10 years to complete from when the pro forma was written, and interest rates were in a very different place than where they are now. So when interest rates reached a level that they're at 7, 8, 9%, there's no place to go. Your construction loan and your operating loan are now the same.
Totally.
So I'm not charging enough rent on my units, on my space, to cover this interest rate. I was expecting a 3% interest rate. That's where everything was built around. And until we start seeing those interest rates come down and the Fed starts responding and cutting interest rates, I don't know that we've seen the bottom of that yet. And then added to that are the questions around tariffs, and that being such a moving target right now. There are people that I work with in the industry who are trying to write a proposal, and they don't know that the proposal is not good for 24 hours. Because it's such a moving target. And I think we're starting to see some settling there. And I think that's going to help our part, the technology part, and some of the materials and things of trying to cost out a project.
Of course,
But it's hard to pencil these projects these days, because there are just so many moving targets. So I am hopeful that in the next 3 years we'll be in a very different place. It's inflation, which is already coming down, interest rates coming down and getting the Fed to cooperate, and what was the third thing I said?
You have interest rates, you have tariffs,
and then the settling of tariffs.
Yeah.
As those things come together, then I think we're going to be in a much better place in 3 years.
Well, I guess that's all we can hope and pray for right now, man. Because I just read that crazy thing. We're here in Colorado, like 2019, that office space sold for $200 million or $190 million, and it just recently sold for just about $3 million.
Yeah.
It's like insane.
Yeah, and banks are taking over properties. They don't want to be in that business, but they don't have any choice because there's still going to be some shakeup. Yeah, I think, unless things turn around more quickly than I'm seeing right now.
So interesting. I wanted to end the show with you on what would be your favorite quote personally that you live by, and why does that one quote or saying speak to Ken?
Boy, there are so many. There's one that I've been reciting a lot, that I've been saying a lot, and it's put in the work. The work works. It either works for you or it works on you, meaning that it's the work is going to do what you expect it to do, and you're going to get the result that you want, and that's working for you, or it's going to work on you. It's going to get you ready for that next thing. And so that's something that I've been using a lot. The work works. Just keep doing the work and put in the work and let the work do the work.
Awesome. I love it, man. Well, I see you putting in the work with Layer 10 and Layer 10 Academy and everything that you've done with Trailhead community. We'll also have a link in the show for Trailhead community, just because you are the president with along with your beautiful wife, Zara, who's in attendance today, who we also need to have on this podcast, by the way, at a different time.
Yes, you do. High recommend.
Yeah, I recommend. It'd be good to hear from your better half.
My better 3/4.
Yeah,
yes.
There you go. I appreciate it, man. I truly appreciate you joining us on the show, and we'll have to do a round 2.
Yeah, I would love that. Thanks, James. Appreciate your time.